Okay, Algebra 1 fans, our topic for today, this is section 1-1, variable expressions. And our objectives, after this lesson, students should be able to translate verbal expressions to algebraic expressions and vice versa, which means that we can switch it. So verbal to algebraic, algebraic to verbal. And before we start, let me give you your joke of the day. How does a train eat? It goes choo-choo. A lot of what we're going to do today here is really just vocabulary, understanding what words represent mathematically, and just making sure that we can use them and we can translate them in the proper context. Okay, so what you see here are the symbols for plus, minus, times, divide, and let's write down words that represent plus. Okay, so first of all, you could say plus. You could say add. You could say increase. You could say more than. But I'll tell you, probably the word that you'll see the most often is what we call sum. Okay, and I'm going to put a circle around that. The sum of two numbers, when you see sum, that means adding. Now, another word for sum, you'll also see the word total. Okay, so those are all different words that they all mean the same thing. And it's just important that if you see these words, you're immediately thinking, okay, plus, I'm adding. Well, then we have minus, subtract. Well, increase means to add. Decrease means to subtract. Difference is one of the most common words for subtraction. So difference. The sum of two numbers means to add. The difference of two numbers means to subtract. And then we also have less or less than. Decrease may also be decreased by. Okay, and there are other ways to describe it. You know, it might be goes down, goes up, but these are the common words that you'll see. All right, this one, multiply, times. The most common word is product. And when I say common, the most common word, what you're going to see on, math assessments, books, things like that. When you see that word product, that means you're multiplying. Now also though, if we say twice or 3 times something or 4 times it, the number doesn't matter. But also fractions, half. If you take a percent of something, that's multiplication. If you take a fraction of something, that's multiplication. If I take half of 10, now a lot of times in our mind, what we'll do is 10 divided by 2, which is correct, but you're not dividing by a half, you're dividing by 2. Using the fraction, that's really 1/2 times 10 over 1, which equals 10 over 2. That's how you're getting 5. Okay? Last one here, or second to last one, this is divide. And another word to be aware of is quotient. The quotient is what you get, the result you get from dividing two numbers. And then we have exponents. Okay, we talked about exponents last class. If I write 5 raised to the 3rd, that means 5 times 5 times 5. If I expand it, which equals 125. If I evaluate that. Now 5 raised to the 3rd, we can say cubed when the exponent's a 3. 4 raised to the 2nd, that's 4 times 4, which is 16. When the exponent's a 2, you can just say squared, 4 squared. Okay, so exponents. If we're saying it in its long form, we're saying 4 raised to the second power, 5 raised to the third power. All right, and then down here you have this expression, 4 times 5 is 20. The result you get from multiplying is the product. There's that word product again. But the numbers that are multiplying each other are called the factors. So 4 and 5 are factors, and then 20 is the product. Another common word is multiples. So if I ask you for multiples of the number 20, that's if I take this number 20 and I start multiplying by natural numbers. So 20 times 1, 20 times 2, 20 times 3, that gives me multiples of 20, which would be 20, 40, 60, we could keep going, 80, and so on. So this is a lot of vocabulary, but when you hear words, you need to immediately think of, okay, mathematically, what are they asking me to do? What are they talking about? But you also need to be able to say these, to use these when you're explaining to somebody else or when you're asking questions. So the second part of this is translating verbal and algebraic expressions. Verbal is words, and algebra is using the symbols, okay, and variables. So, if the verbal expression, number 1, is the sum of a number and 5, I like to underline my keywords. Sum means to add. Now, a number. They don't tell us what the number is. Now, a number could be anything. There are infinite possible values for this number. So since I don't know what it is, I am going to give it what I call a variable. In this case, I'm going to use the letter n. A lot of times you'll use x or y. N is what we call a variable that just represents an unknown number. So the sum of a number and 5. So I know that I'm going to add. What are the two things I'm adding? My number and 5. So the verbal expression is the sentence. The algebraic expression is n plus 5. Now again, you could use any letter. So if you had said x plus 5, it's good. If you had said a plus 5, it's good. Number 2, this time they give us the algebraic expression. And can we write that verbally? Now there's a couple ways you could do it. You could say 6 times a number minus 3. That would work. You could say the product. Remember, product means to multiply. The product of 6 and a number. Well, I should write the word number. The product of 6 and a number. Now, I could say minus 3. I could say subtracted by 3. The product of 6 and a number subtracted by 3. So, in terms of writing the words, since we have more than one word for a lot of these operations, we can write these in different ways and still be correct. Number 3, here's a verbal expression. The difference of 3 and a number raised to the 4th power. Okay, difference is subtraction. The difference of 3 and the number is what's raised to the 4th power. So 3 comes first. The difference of 3 and the number, let's call it n, raised to the 4th power. That means n raised to the 4th. The exponent is a 4. That's what they're telling us. Now here's where you have to be careful. When you see less than, it means to subtract. Less than means subtract. So just like difference means to subtract, less than means to subtract. However, what we actually have to do is we have to switch the order. You're going to be tempted to say 3 minus n, and you're going to be wrong. The answer is actually n minus 3, and let me explain why. When I get stuck, when I get confused about vocabulary or a situation, I try to think of an example with numbers. Let's say we're talking about money. Let's say I have $4 less than your $10. You have $10, I have $4 less than you. Now you can do that in your head and you know that the answer is 6. I have 4 less than you. 4 less than 10 is 6. But if you think about it, you didn't do 4 minus 10 to get there. If you do that, you end up with negative 6, which is wrong. So how did I subtract these? I must have done 10 minus 6. In other words, what did I have to do with these two numbers? I had to switch them. So when you see less than, you need to change the order. So instead of 3 minus n, it's n minus 3. All right, and that's tricky. That's something that you have to be aware of. If I say, and this is very similar example, I'll just put it on the side here. If I say 3 less a number, we don't normally say it this way, but it's possible. 3 less a number, that's 3 minus n. Do you notice how this doesn't have less than? So that one word makes a difference in terms of the order and how you do it. All right, we got 3 more here. Number 5, the product of 7 and the sum of 3 and a number. So we've got 2 operations here. Product is multiplication, sum is addition. Well, we're going to add, what are we adding here? 3 and a number. So this part goes together. Okay, I'll underline this in red. That's all one expression. So the sum of 3 and a number is 3 plus n. The product of 7 and that sum. You're going to be tempted to say 7 times 3 plus n. But if you do that, again, we're wrong because you're only multiplying the 7 by 3. The 7 has to multiply both of these because it's multiplying the whole sum. So what I'm going to do is write parentheses and put the 7 outside parentheses. Now that means 7 times this whole sum. So you see how important it is to be able to interpret the words so that we can write down the correct algebraic expression. If we're trying to solve an equation, this is vital. We have to get this right or else we'll get the wrong solution. Number 6, they give us an algebraic expression. B divided by 2 minus 8. I'm going to use the word quotient. So the quotient of a number and 2. So that takes care of b over 2. And then we can say minus 8. Or, you know what? I'll say decreased by. Decreased. That means go down. Decreased by 8. Okay. And the last one, 2/3 of a number squared. Well, 2/3 is a fraction, 2 over 3. The number, there's n, squared means raised to the second power. So 2/3, now remember, when you take a fraction of a number, if I come back up here, fraction of, that means you're multiplying. So what we're doing is 2/3 times a number squared. And you don't even need that multiplication symbol. Usually when we have a number times a variable, we just put the number next to the variable like that. So 2/3 n squared. And that is the end of the notes.